Another week, more Calcio to talk about here on the Calcio Guys with Adriano. I'm Nicholas. Calcio Guys, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all the social media networks except for TikTok at the Calcio Guys. And joining us this week is Julian from Calcio with Julian, Get Italian Football News Network, De Laziale, right in our own backyard, our paisan here in Montreal. Julian, how's it going?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're long overdue with this episode, Julian. So we're happy to have you back on. It's been I think we're off air. We were talking a bit. It's been almost 2 years, so long overdue. But again, thank you for taking the time to come on.
No, thank you guys for having me on. Looking forward to it. It was a spectacular match week 7, so it feels good to be talking about it with you guys, especially that we're all from NTL. So it's great. It's a great reunion.
That's it.
Good little run for your Inter now. Pretty much since losing in the derby, win 3-2 versus Udinese, a win 4-0 versus Red Star Belgrade in the Champions League, a win 3-2 versus Torino in this past weekend in the city. But I mean, like, jumping back to that derby, I mean, yes, these 3 wins are nice, but I think at the end of the day, Julian, you probably would have liked the derby win as well, right?
Yeah, the derby win would have felt nice. Especially the way we lost. I think we were pretty much like outclassed, despite some moments here and there where we dominated. I just feel like overall Fonseca deployed a very well executed masterclass tactically, and even the players technically they stuck to the coach's tactics. They trusted him, and it worked out. So. Just a little bit disappointed by the way we lost. Obviously, a win, even a draw at that point, considering Milan were playing that much better and we're far more menacing than Inter in the final third. I think a point would have made me feel satisfied. But definitely, when you enter these derbies, you want to win. But overall, of course, happy with the results. But again, the derby win, the derby defeat still stings for sure.
No, absolutely. I mean, listen, you had a bunch of them, so Inter had Milan's number for many.
Yeah, it was about time, I think.
So I think you could have left one for us, Milan, here. So no, but listen, I think you said it well, Julian. We spoke about it after the derby on the show, and I think for once, we finally saw a change in terms of in Milan's point of view. A different system, a different approach, a different lineup in terms of the formation, everything going back to the traditional 4-4-2 seemed to work for Milan. But I think after that, I don't know if you can say it, Julian, but Inter, I think definitely woke up, because I think going into the derby, I don't know if they looked past Milan. Like, we can't say that, we don't know 100%, but it seemed like we had their number so many years, so many derbies in a row. Like, we'll take Milan maybe a bit more lightly than they probably should have. It ultimately didn't help them in the end, but I think blessing in disguise, you lose that derby, you're going on a 3-game winning streak in all competitions. So is that more on Inzaghi, Julian, in terms of really getting his players going, or is that just the class of the players that you have, the depth that you guys have in your roster?
I think it's a mixture of everything. I mean, the way we started the derby, everybody expected the opposite, like Inter to be dominating and Milan to be in a low block and hoping for the counter. But rather, like, the first 10 minutes, Inter looked so uncomfortable. Like, they weren't able to keep possession, and Milan were just moving the ball so comfortably, and they managed to get that first goal. And so I think, like, the way Inter have been starting these games since the Milan derby have been really poor. Like, I feel like the way they commenced the games have been quite disappointing. They looked flat-footed, and it took them a while to get into it. I think it's a mixture of Inzaghi, the fatigue. People are saying perhaps preseason was a little bit too harsh. Perhaps Inzaghi overran them, considering this is the longest season in history, and Inter are featuring in all competitions. But definitely, I think the Milan derby was definitely an awakening, in the sense that this, although Inter, in my opinion, are still the best team on paper, this title charge, defending the title, will not be an easy task. It's not for granted. It's you're gonna have to fight to earn it, and From there, I think they took off pretty well. Considering a bad start against Milan, they commenced brilliantly against Udinese. Literally the first minute, Fratesi scored. In the second half, too, we got an early goal. I think definitely Inter are improving, but still, I think one of the main weaknesses of the Inter side is defensively, which was arguably the greatest strengths last year. One of their greatest strengths last year. If you look at the stats, last season we conceded 22 goals throughout the whole season. Already we're at 9 in 7 games played. And last year, Inter were phenomenal. I think one of the main reasons why Inter won the Scudetto was just their ability to suffer. Like everybody talks about that, like having La Grinta. Last season, Inter had a phenomenal record of barely conceding a goal in the last 15 minutes, and already we conceded 6, which is more than the entirety of last season in the last 15 minutes. So it's just we're not able. I feel like we're just if we were to be in those tight games where we'd be winning 1-0 or holding off a draw in the last 50 minutes at this stage at the moment, we seem too fragile. There's a lack of mental focus in the back line, especially in transition. We're a bit slow. So I just feel like at this stage, Inter need to wake up defensively, or else I don't see Inter clinching the Scudetto.
I kind of want to talk about the other side, though. You talk about this defensive side, but you look at their offense, best offense in Serie A right now, 16 goals scored, tied with Atalanta. So the two Nerazzurri teams, pretty fitting that have the most goals scored in the league at 16 through 7 games. But it's crazy, 16 for Inter, 7 of them from Thuram. So 9 other goals from a guy not named Thuram. Regardless, someone's got to score. You're paying the guy. He's your striker. He's doing his job. Do you think for Inter, that's just going to be their identity this season, where they're just going to outscore teams, or they're just going to go outscore 2, 3, 4, 5, even 5 goals a game? Or do you think this is maybe not sustainable throughout 38 games?
No, I think definitely compared to last season, Inter have more depth up top. Like compared to last season, like up top we have the addition of Meditaremi, Zielinski in the midfield as well, who's known to be somewhat of a prolific goal scorer from distance throughout his time at Napoli. I think right now, like I think the only disappointing part was Lautaro Martinez's slow start to the season, but he seems to be picking it up after a brace against Udinese, scoring a goal in the Champions League. So I think he's picking it up, but no, I think one thing, despite the defensive woes, I guess I would say, I think one thing that they've been doing well is still producing those attacking. Those chances in the final third and finishing them clinically, especially Marcus Thuram. I think he's a pretty last season. I think he was he proven to be an overall complete player. And I think the one part that he could have improved on was his finishing. But this year, like he's proven to be the true the true number 1 / bomber so far this season. I mean, 7 goals in 9 matches. So.
What's his contract situation like? Because already you could probably think maybe he's going to ask for the big bucks. I don't know what is his contract situation like. Sorry to cut you off, Adrian.
Yeah, I think it's probably maybe he has another 4 years left. Definitely, he's going to want to. I feel like Inter are going to try to submit an increased offer soon, especially that currently he's the top goal scorer. I think eventually it's bound to happen for sure.
Yeah, everybody wants to buy these days.
Yeah.
Right. So no, but it's the truth, right?
It's true.
Everybody's looking for the money. I mean, no, I know we love the beautiful game, but at the end of the day, these guys want to get paid, and what they're valued at. Sometimes that's sustainable, sometimes that's not, depending on the club. But one thing that you touched upon, and speaking about Thuram, Julian, having the depth and having not to only rely on a guy like Lautaro Martinez, especially with the competitions that Inter are in. Like a top team usually is in, with this new Champions League format and obviously the grind of Serie A and obviously Coppa Italia as well. But, how important is that? And is that something that you can see helping in all these competitions in terms of, can Inter, maybe Inter doesn't go back to back in terms of winning the Scudetto, but a top 4 finish? How does the Champions League look for you? Like where are you kind of are you kind of spreading your eggs in all the baskets, or are you kind of really trying to focus on one? Basically, is the question.
No, I think Inzaghi's made it clear in the media. I think just recently they just had an interview with him, and they said that they asked him, "Would you rather win the Scudetto again or the Champions League?" And he said, "At Inter we compete for all the competition." So I think that speaks volumes, and I think definitely the depth helps. Like having a luxury midfield of Zielinski, Fratesi, Aslani, Barella, and Mkhitaryan, like having that six as your midfield, a luxury. Center park, it's just remarkable. And I think like definitely the depth will definitely allow us to compete somewhat in all competitions for sure. And I think that's the goal, is to try to win as many competitions, as many cups as we could.
Champions League. So we said, like what we said, 3-2. 4-0 versus Red Star. Their first game, I'm drawing a blank, Julian. I'm just pulling it up. But their first game in the Champions League was it was the Man City game, 0-0, right? The rematch of the final from 2023. So they have 4 points now. I haven't checked the Champions League table, but just curious your thoughts on this new format.
It's interesting. It really is interesting. I find it's too many. I find like it's an interesting format, but just like between the league, the Coppa Italia, and the Champions League, it's just too many games for these players. I find.
Yeah.
That's my only criticism. Like, although it's exciting, like at the end of the day, like they're humans. Like, they can't overrun.
You're right.
And you know what? That's just one thing I thought about. Bremer tearing his ACL, Zapata tearing his ACL.
Bremer, yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Bremer, it was in the Champions League. I'm not saying, it's directly because of those games, but it's just the addition, and the continuously more and more games. It takes a toll on the body eventually.
Absolutely.
It sucks, especially for Torino, a guy like Zapata. They had a good start, and one thing I'll say before we continue, Juve, yes, it sucks that we lost Bremer. It's a huge loss, but it feels like they have the depth there, and they can replace him. Torino, not so much. There's already rumors of them wanting Balotelli, so from us, we're wishing those two guys all their best. I know they're probably not listening, but ACL, it's one of the worst injuries in sports. One of my friends tore his ACL skiing in February, and he told me about it, and it's just terrible process. So I just wanted to jump in and talk about that, but.
I think this whole thing with the too many games, like we've been saying this
since the pandemic.
Since the pandemic, really, right? Like
just keep adding games,
keep on adding games, and we can speak up about it. Players can speak up about it, but at the end of the day, like I don't think those things will change, and if they do, it's not going to be that drastic of a difference. Like you go from a tournament year in the summer with a Euro or a World Cup, and there's these Nations League games. We have all these competitions for the clubs. It's just packed schedule from the beginning of the season till the end, and like there's really no break. Again, I know people are going to say, well, listen, these guys are getting paid millions and millions of dollars to play this game. They shouldn't complain. But to play devil's advocate, right, like you said, Julian, these are human beings as well, and they deserve the rest to be able to perform at the highest of levels. For people to pay tickets to go to these games that want to see the best players on the pitch at all times, right? So it's a really it's a catch-22. It's a real give and take, I think. But I don't know, the overall in terms of the Champions League format, not only for Inter, but like is it something that you think is a sustainable format for the Champions League? Because everybody said they didn't want the Super League. We wanted to save football, but it seems like they're putting the Super League idea and naming it the Champions League. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Julian, but it's just something that we've spoke about on the show, and just want to maybe hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, no, it's literally that. For me, it's just literally the Super League something similar to the Super League concept, just under UEFA. I mean, whether it's going to be sustainable or not, I think it's still too early to tell. But it's interesting. It's an interesting concept. We'll see how it goes for the rest of the season. But overall, I think it's been interesting so far. I think a lot of the people's main criticism was that too many small teams, but yet like a lot of those minnows have been pulling upsets. So it's pretty interesting.
For me, what I I'm a bit, I guess, concerned about this format is when you had the group stage, the team you played 1 week, the team you played 2 weeks, they're going to play each other the week after. So
Right.
you're just playing the same teams, and you're playing the teams you need a battle with in terms of position. And that may not necessarily be the case here. You look at Juve. Juve's in 7th place right now. They have 6 points. Inter is in 9th place at 4 points. They're not going to play each other. So you don't have those direct battles. Like, there's still a chance that you could, like Juve and Man City are 7-8 right now, and they will play each other towards the end. But for me, it's those games. Like every season, it almost feels like it's a regular season NHL game. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
So, or you could say just a regular City A game just in the middle of the weekend. Sure, yes, it has the nice dressing and Champions League, this and that. But for me, it seems like the most important games obviously are going to be knockout. But it feels like the jump now from group stage or whatever they call it, league phase to knockout is huge. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if you agree with me, Julian. Maybe it's the hype. Let's just say it's the hype.
Yeah, like I see what you mean. Like it's these first couple of games aren't as important compared to like the group stage games. Like would be like I find for sure. Yeah, and especially like it's only get more heated and exciting perhaps towards the end of the the last stages of the group stage, because right now like everyone's like pretty much level, and like there's just such small differences between them in terms of points. So too early to tell who's going to make it. In fact, like I think it's going to be probably down to goal. Goal differential is going to be key in this in this new format of the Champions League. So
we'll agree. See. And it even eliminates kind of like the the home and away.
Right,
exactly.
I'm
gonna have to play you in my home. I'm going to come to your home to go play, and
exactly.
It kind of loses that, and like Nick said, like kind of just obviously who you're going to be playing because the schedule already comes out, sure, but like you have to prepare for these 3 teams and home and away, and how it's going to go down. Again, it is interesting. I think that's really the word to say for it. It's really a wait and see. I do agree with that comment, Julian, because it's still brand new. It's still fresh. It's still something like where we've gone through 2 match days in the Champions League so far. So there's I don't know. I think it just takes away from what the Champions League was, like the uniqueness, and you get your groups, you play the groups, and then after that it's a knockout stage, and I don't know. I think it just loses that feel, that touch. But listen, I guess we'll come back to maybe this conversation maybe after this season and kind of really judge it after from that. But just kind of want to bring it back to Inter specifically, Julian. We started off obviously with what we saw currently in this current Inter, but coming into the season, and we probably should have asked you this first, but I'm going to ask you now. Coming into the season, obviously off the Scudetto win last season, like what were your expectations coming into this season, and are those basically what were your expectations, and what were your feelings with how the Mercato went, and kind of how this early start of the season started for Inter?
The Mercato overall wasn't very active, which I was expecting, considering we just won the Scudetto. So I just didn't think that there was many changes needed. Also, like a change to the transition to the ownership, etc. Like, and with the Euro as well too. Like, I think the Euros definitely slowed everyone's Mercato down quite a bit. Like, it only got intense towards the end, like when the season started towards the end of the transfer window. I think that's when pretty much all the signings occurred, like throughout the Euro, so it's pretty slow. But I think overall, in terms of the season, I still had the Inter winning the Scudetto simply because, to me, like having the same renewing Inzaghi's contract, Lautaro and Barella, maintaining all their stars for once. It feels like the first time in forever that Inter managed to keep everybody. I just feel like having that continuity is huge going into the season. Maintaining that continuity was huge heading into the season. So I think being able to have Inzaghi, the Mister, being able to having him there to portray his philosophy of play and continue what he was building on last season, I think for me was one of my main reasons for having them to defend the title again. But I think definitely one thing that's just been disappointing, which is how poor they've been so far, the defensively, and the slow start to Lautaro's season. I didn't expect him to have such a long goal drought. But other than that, I mean, it's been pretty good so far, considering the how many games they've been playing. It's pretty good so far how they've been able to compete in all competitions and maintain a top 4 spot in the Serie A. Definitely struggling. Definitely not the same Inter we saw last season so far, but overall they're still there. They're still title contenders and not too far from Napoli. So it's been impressive so far. Also.
I think also like we were saying on the show, like in these past couple of weeks, it's like I don't know if you guys think different, but like how Inter ran away with it last season, how Napoli ran away with it the season prior. I don't know if we're gonna see that this season. I feel like it's a lot closer at the top. Teams got better. Teams have improved, and maybe not even in the market, but bringing in players, not like selling some dead wood, new philosophy, new coaches. So I think that top of the table race so far, again, very still early, so it's hard to say. But I don't foresee it being like somebody really running away with it like we saw with Inter and then Napoli 2 seasons ago. So I think that's something to look out for, and it's going to be exciting, probably down to the wire, which it seems to always be until these last 2 seasons. Like teams run away with it.
And comparing to last season, obviously they won the Scudetto, but in terms of the other competitions, they were knocked out round of 16 in both Champions League and Coppa Italia. So you talk about continuity. You talk about improvement. Where do you want to see Inter in terms of those competitions like Coppa Italia and Champions League? Obviously, you want to see them win the Scudetto again, but in terms of have a better season, they need to get past the round of 16 in both of those competitions. So it's also a balance game too, right? So how do you see that, Julian?
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be tough. It's not easy. It's never easy competing for so many competitions simultaneously. But I think especially in the Champions League, like Inter have to make it further. I think that was one of the only very disappointing parts of the season, was just not making it past Atletico Madrid in that round of 16 match. I definitely would like to see Inter at least compete in the quarterfinals for sure, especially after having that taste of almost winning the final against City. I think even the dressing room felt it just, for them, it made them feel like we could actually compete with the best of Europe. So I would love to see Inter go far again, which I think they could, given the great quality that they have in all positions this season.
No, absolutely. I mean, listen, it was about time we saw an Italian team in the final, right?
Yeah.
It's been a long time, so just to see that again, I mean, it's not the team I would have liked there, but
no, for sure.
At least it was an Italian team.
For sure.
It's one thing to say, and listen, they hung in there, and we all watched the game. Like, they really hung in there. If it wasn't for a stroke of brilliance by Rodri, like it could have been just another game, right? Different type of results. So I think they held their own. For sure, and we even saw it like you guys said in the opening Champions League matchup this year. They were able to get another 0-0 draw with City, so they're able to hold their own, and I think we need that to continue in terms of a league, in terms of Serie A, to progress in Europe. We need these teams to continue and progress and improve, year in and year out in these competitions. So
I forgot to mention, Inter won the Super Copa last season, so throw that in. This season, it's back to the 14 format in Saudi Arabia. Inter, Juve, Milan, and Atalanta to be played in January. So that's a conversation for another day. Julian, before we move on, talk about Azzurri, I just want to look forward for Inter's schedule for the month of October, where it's actually pretty interesting. It looks like it's going to be a tough schedule for Inter coming back from this international break coming up. They got Roma. They got Champions League away against Young Boys. They got Juve on the 27th, Empoli, Venezia, and then home to Arsenal in Champions League. And then they play Napoli November 10th. And then there's the last international break of the year. So a couple of tough opponents, obviously, in the Serie A. But then obviously you throw in the Champions League games, that makes it tougher. what do you want to see? And you know what? I think I know your answer because you're probably going to say that improving defensively. But what do you want to see from this Inter in these games?
I think I just want to see Inzaghi try to utilize his depth to the full potential and just find the right balance between rotating the players and obtaining the results. And I think so far he seems to have struggled with utilizing his depth and trying to get the best result. But hopefully this window, this period before the final international window before the year, he could have Inter perhaps improve, perform at their optimal, and maybe not. Definitely, I don't see them winning all the matches, but if they could go on especially in this, hopefully go on a good stretch of like 3 to 4 wins, hopefully somehow in between that madness.
It's going to be tough. I think
it's going to be tough.
These big matchups, later into the year, it's before the international breaks, holidays, all that stuff.
Right.
Like it's a long stretch of games, and but I think one thing that Inter does have to their advantage, and we always say it, they have the best team. They were the best team in Serie A, right, last season. I think they still are one of, if not the best team in Serie A currently, and the depth that we just keep on saying this episode, I think is crucial. And I was going to ask you if it was worrisome for Lautaro not starting the way it is, but I guess not if you have a guy like Thuram. But I think with strikers, they get hot at certain times, they get cold at others. So I think that's always going to be like an up and down thing. You can't. It's hard. It's so hard to be on top of your game and mentally, physically for a 38 match season plus other competition. So. I don't know if that's really a worrisome thing, but besides Thuram that you mentioned earlier, before we move on to maybe some Azzurri talk, who else has impressed you, and who would you like to see more of in terms of upping their performances? Besides a guy like Thuram and I guess Lautaro, since we spoke about them already.
I think Barella so far has been incredible. Hakan Çalhanoğlu really picked up where he left off last season. Mm-hmm. Bastoni has been remarkable. I found. I think definitely one player who I'd like to see pick it up more is Pavard. I feel like we saw a little bit of decline in him, lack of focus. The Milan derby, he got beat far too easily against Pulisic. He's made a couple of defensive errors throughout these first couple of games, and especially coming off last season where he played brilliantly. I think we all know that he has the potential to be one of the best defenders in the Serie A, but just so far this season he hasn't proven that just yet. So I think that's one player that needs to sharpen up his game for sure.
Adrian, unless you have any other questions, we could move on to
not the top of my head, but Azzurri, it's like around the corner now, so I guess it's time to talk.
At least this is an area in which we could all agree, and there's no
for sure
or disagree, depending. Even amongst the Italian fans, we can have some disagreements, so we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. So UEFA Nations League, Italy obviously started strong last time out in September, wins versus France and Israel. So they play Belgium on Thursday this time around in Rome, and Israel again in Udine on Monday. Like I said, good start for Italy, 6 points, top of the group. We know the Nations League has a bit of World Cup qualifications implications where the winner of the group, they're at least guaranteed a playoff spot in the World Cup qualifying. Obviously, you don't want that. You want still Italy to go through the qualifying and qualify the normal way. But regardless, gives them a security blanket. I mean, how important is this tournament for you, Julian? Italy's been close. Back-to-back third-place finishes. Do you want to see them win it?
I mean, I wouldn't mind to see them win it. Apart from the World Cup the fact that it has a little bit of implication with the World Cup qualifying for the World Cup qualifiers is the only reason why I care a little bit more. But I think to see them win it, sure, I think it would somewhat send a message to the other teams that we could definitely compete. It's some sort of a competition at the end of the day. But on the other hand, I just feel like it's somewhat like glorified like friendlies. I feel like to a certain extent, but I don't know. But overall, I think it allows us to test out our some of our younger stars, or perhaps allows Spalletti to call up perhaps unfamiliar names against the top quality opponents. I don't know. It's interesting, but yet to a certain extent, it's almost like glorified friendlies and like unnecessary additional games. Perhaps I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no. Listen, it's again, that's another thing we've gone back and forth with the Nations League. It's you can see both sides, and honestly, I think there's, like you said, and I think we'll probably all agree, there's definitely positives, but there's also some negatives in these games and stuff. But like you just mentioned, Julian, in terms of trying out new stars and new players and new systems, like just even the call-ups that he currently made for this window, bringing 4 new players that again haven't seen the senior call-up in the past. So it's impressive. One thing that Spalletti had, I think, after the Euros and after that disappointment, I think really woke up and kind of wanted to change is really the whole focus of this competition and these international breaks to have the ability to change, to try to find your best 11. Because one thing that I was saying after the Euros, or even during the Euros and after we crashed out of the Euros, is I don't think we had our best 11 on the pitch every game. Every scheme, it seemed to be there was something different, there was something to change, something to rotate. And it's like, if we still can't find our best 11 come a tournament, I think that's a problem. So having Spalletti experiment before competitions come to play, I think is huge. And like I said, this window bringing in 4 new names and 4 young names too in certain cases, Di Gregorio, Gabbia, Pisilli, and Daniel Maldini. It's something that I don't know, I feel like we haven't seen in the past, like overall, because I don't think we've spoken to in terms of international talk. But what's been your takes on Spalletti and kind of like his approach and like how just your overall thoughts on this current Azzurri?
No, I think definitely the Euros was this, like we all know, the Euros was like flat out like disappointing. Yeah. Like the way we crashed out, we barely competed and so forth. But I think the Nations League, I think that's where we really saw Spalletti's like offensive ideas really kick in, and we scored remarkable goals. We were actually competing at the highest level, and I'm just happy that he's finally starting to turn towards the youth, like Samuel Ricci. Samuel Ricci has been phenomenal for not only Torino but also in the Italian national team. I think that was his first call-up against France, so it was very impressive. Probably perhaps one of the best debuts in such a long time. And now Daniele Maldini and Pisilli, 2 players who I think totally deserve it. Michele Di Gregorio and between the sticks. So I think I'm just happy that he's finally starting to turn towards some of the younger players, because I think at the end of the day we do need some of that spark and energy that these young prospects could provide on the pitch.
Let's look at the roster. So, what was it? 23 players, 23, I'd say. Yeah. I think it was 23 players, yeah. So that's Donnarumma, Vicario, Di Gregorio, which honestly, I'm surprised this was Di Gregorio's first call-up. I really thought...
I know.
At one point, he was called up. Like, if you told me he was on the Euro team, I would have said, yeah, of course he was. But obviously, fantastic start to the season for him, so obviously he deserves it. Defenders, Di Lorenzo, Bastoni, Di Marco, Cambiaso, Buongiorno, Calafiori, Udogi, Bellanova, Gabbia, and Occoli. In mid, Pellegrini, Frattesi, Tonali, Fagioli, Ricci, Pisilli, and up front, small contingent of forwards, Raspadori, Retegui, Lorenzo Luca, who's replacing Ken, and Daniel Maldini, another one of those who's getting his first call up. So 3rd generation of Maldini. Between both of you, any surprises? Because for me, I think the surprise is not having Locatelli, who for me, I think he's had a good start to the season. This is a guy that, I'm not, I don't have that Juve bias where I don't think he's the best midfielder in the world, and I know he struggled last season and all that, but I think he's had a good start to the season, and he probably deserves to be back on this team. Obviously, Spalletti doesn't see the same way, but it's interesting. Pisili making it. I know he scored the other day for Roma. Maybe it's just a chance for him to get integrated into the squad. Maybe Spalletti sees it that way, but at the end of the day, I'm not the coach, but other than that, I don't think there's too many surprises.
For me, before you go, Julian, for me, I've been seeing online, and I think another midfielder, if you want to say, a guy like Locatelli, I think Rovella too, for Lazio, has definitely been another name going under the radar in terms of his play recently. One thing that Spalletti, I remember when he first came in, is that he said, and that he kind of went with and then kind of veered away with it, was merit-based call-ups, right? That's kind of was the biggest, or one of the bigger things that he mentioned in his opening press conferences when he first got appointed. Merit-based call-ups, and has he done that for certain players? Yes. Has he done it for others? Maybe, not really. So another guy that I would probably say, if you want to say, surprise, is maybe a guy like Rovella. Even him, he said in a quote that I think I saw online, is that like, what else do I have to do to maybe kind of get on, right? And but he's like, listen, I back what the Spalletti chooses. He knows what's right, and I just have to continue to play my game and to continue to improve to hopefully get a call up in the future. And listen, these guys are still young, and I think there's still time to give to the national team. But if there's another surprise, I would definitely say a guy like Rovella for Lazio. I know guys were even saying Zaccagni. In terms of our forwards, it seems to be another lacking position group. The forwards only having 4. It was worse in last call up list, and listen, we got the results, so I guess we can't say too much. But again, with only the 4, Keane going out and bringing Lorenzo Luca in, which is another exciting thing to see. And if he gets minutes, I would like to see how he performs. But off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody else. But I would probably say Rovella. Maybe he's like a guy like Zaccagni, but it's, people are going to say Politano, and, the Napoli fans are going to say Politano and this and that. But I don't know. I think if there was be a priority, I would keep a guy like Rovella at the top of that priority of missing out this call-up list. Julian, anybody else come to mind?
No, I think definitely Locatelli. I think he's been one of the best midfielders so far this season. I could have seen him getting selected over Pellegrini, to be honest, who's been quite disappointing so far. And Rovella too. I think somebody who could have maybe have been selected over Pizzilli. Not that he's been bad, but I just think Rovella has been playing better, in my opinion. Who's been more of a who really had an influence on the Lazio so far since the start of the season. And no, I think he did well. I think Lorenzo Luca deserves the call up of having to replace Moise Kean. I think he's been very consistent with Udinese. So I'm excited to see him finally get some minutes with the Azzurri.